Actually, we're at 5:01 p.m. now, so I am going to start the class. Good evening. Thank you for joining me on this infotutorial about mortgages for YouTubers, influencers, creators, and internet personalities of all types. I will lump these many jobs together as interneters, lovingly. Why do I provide this class? Because knowledge is power, and I want that knowledge in your hands so you can make good decisions. People who make their living on the internet are a huge growing job class, and they are underserved. They're probably underserved because there's people who think it's not a job. They wonder where all the money came from. Newsflash, the new advertising industry is interneters. The only way to have your product seen, if you have a product, is to have it pop up in a Mr. Beast YouTube video, and there you have it. That's advertising nowadays. And the influencers provide a conduit for those advertisers. Why do I know a little about this? Because I've been lending to self-employed people for 23 years. I've been self-employed, and I also have a media company that brings in revenue from YouTube and affiliate marketing. So I feel like I'm in a good position to help you out. All right. As an introduction, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'll be remarkably brief. I know your time is valuable, and I hate conference calls where they spend 20 minutes on introductions and name dropping and then finally very slowly get to the point. I grew up in Minnesota. I got a civil engineering degree at the University of Minnesota, got married in 99, moved to Colorado in 2000, switched to mortgages in 2003, had my own mortgage company for 5 years, adopted 4 awesome kids from China, and now I'm talking to you about mortgage solutions. I've won the 5-Star Mortgage Professional Award for 15 years in a row, and I'm a passionate homeownership advocate because I believe it's a basic human right to own the roof over your head. Hopefully that was short enough. Now, housekeeping. My NMLS number is 279038. My employer's NMLS number is 1820, and we are an equal housing lender. I'm not going to talk about my employer all that much, so these videos remain evergreen. But I love my employer. They're the 7th mortgage company I've been with, and hopefully I am there until the end of time. I love them. Reminder, I'm not an attorney or a CPA. If you have any kind of mortgage question, please type it into the chat. But please be aware your comments and questions are public. The internet is forever, and I don't think I can edit the comment feed later. If you misbehave, I will report you to YouTube. At the time of this recording, which is, August 13th, 2025, I'm licensed to do business in Colorado, Minnesota, and Arizona. More states added soon. But I think you'll find the advice I give here is applicable in mortgage lending all across the United States. I do this infotutorial every 2 weeks, so tune in again to ask more questions. I will not be answering questions like, what's your rate? What do closing costs add up to? Because those are always specific to you, your property, your state, etc. They are also trigger terms, which is something in our industry where I have to then provide tons of fine print and in hieroglyphics. We're talking guidelines and strategy today, not rates, not even really programs either. Now let's proceed with what you came for. This infotutorial is for interneters trying to use their interneting income as their main source of income, or a secondary income that you may need to be able to qualify. This is an important distinction. Secondary income in mortgage land is a sticky wicket, and we will cover that later. To start with, let's pretend your interneting income is the main and sole source of income, and then we'll come back to secondary or parallel income. There's many different terms for it. Here we go with all the many things I could come up with here for you. To generalize, when you have interneting income, you are self-employed. Even if you graduate to a position or a situation where your S Corp pays you a salary and you get a W-2 at the end of the year, if you own 25% or more of the S Corp, you are self-employed in the eyes of lending. Next item. To start with, do not run your income through personal bank accounts. I put this at the beginning of this list because if you're not willing to graduate to a business name and business bank account, you'll never get a loan that counts your interneting income. I'm sorry if that is hard to hear, but it is really critical. Get a bank account. Sorry to be harsh, but a key component of self-employed income is that a mortgage underwriter will look for how is the self-employed person comporting themselves as a business and not as a slapdash hobby. Look professional. Next item down. Create a business, an LLC, an S Corp. Don't panic. In most states, you can create an LLC at 11 p.m. in your pajamas. Pick a name that's not too generic, and even better, a name where you can get an appropriate domain name. You never know when you're going to need a domain name later, and you've chosen something that's entirely unavailable. I don't recommend using your personal name in your company name for privacy reasons. Also, if like you go to sell the company, if your name is the name all over it, it's a little harder to sell. Odd story. I recently ran across a boat builder named Real Ships. That's their name, Real Ships. Even though they own the realships.com website, when I searched for them, so many other things came up. It's like if I made custom chairs and named the company the Chair Company. I could not figure out why somebody would call themselves Real Ships. It was a very bizarre name. Next item, get a bank account in the business name. This can take a few days to a week. If you want to do it in your jammies, maybe check out an online business checking site like Bluevine. I'm not sponsored by them. I just did a quick search. They seem to be one of the most popular places to get a business checking account online. All right. Next item, have a CPA or tax preparer prepare your business and preferably also your personal taxes. Why does this matter? Let's loop back to something I mentioned before. A mortgage underwriter will look to see that a self-employed person comports themselves as a business and not as a hobby. Having taxes prepared solidifies this professionalism. But here's the bigger issue, mistakes. Self-prepared tax returns have mistakes that can submarine your ability to borrow. I'm sure you're thinking, I self-prepare my taxes and I never make mistakes. Well, good for you. If so, I am very happy and impressed for you. And here's the biggest problem with self-prepared taxes. People get creative. CPAs are not creative. What do I mean by creative? I recently had a self-employed borrower provide me his tax returns. This person was a 1099 employee in the remodeling trades, employed by a company, 1099, but still employed. They had a company truck. On this guy's taxes, he wrote off $16,000 in fuel, $4,500 in tools, and $3,500 in meals and entertainment, conveniently bringing his AGI down to $5 below the lowest tax bracket threshold. I'm not saying you might underreport your self-employed income, but the temptation is there if you self-prepare. The temptation is either not to put the income on the tax return, or in the case of this person, I'm going to be blunt, fabricating write-offs. I did the math on this guy, $16,000 in fuel costs with something like 30,000 miles in a year at an 8 mile per gallon vehicle. It just didn't make any sense. Anyhow, so have a CPA or tax preparer prepare your taxes. The underwriter likes to see it that way too. All right, this is a great moment to talk about write-offs. Many people love self-employment for the simple fact that they can write off a bunch of stuff that they were spending money on anyways. But I want you to remember something critical. Anything you write off is income that has vanished in the eyes of lending. If you have a sewing business and you gross $10,000 profit in a year, but on December 31st, you buy a $3,000 serger and write it off, your income in the eyes of lending is now $7,000. Let's bring up that CPA preparing your taxes. If you're concerned about qualifying for a mortgage the following year, simply send your CPA less write-offs. Just say you didn't buy as much stuff. That will show that you have more income. I know it sounds crazy, but it's a way to do it. Incidentally, I once had a CPA tell me that not writing off all your qualifying write-offs was tax fraud. Interesting breed, that one. Now, some advanced interneters create a business entity for each of their media components. They might have a business entity for each website, each YouTube channel, even each affiliate account. Sometimes CPAs or attorneys may advise people to do this with sound reasoning. I can advise that this will create a paperwork headache for you when you apply for a mortgage loan. But in a real way, it may make your income situation so incomprehensibly complex, an underwriter has a hard time seeing consistency. Consistency is important to an underwriter. Example, I had a client with 3 websites and an LLC for each. She had a consistent income of about $60,000 in 2023 and $60,000 in 2024. $60,000 when we added all 3 websites and LLCs together, okay? But 2 of those websites flip-flop their gross earnings between years, okay? So let me get a little granular here. In 2023, LLC A made about 40% or 40 grand. LLC B made 10 grand, and LLC 3 made another 10 grand for a total of 60. But in 2024, the first 2 flipped around. So A made 10 grand, B made 40 grand, C made 10 grand, partially due to affiliate marketing strategy implementation. You know, so it was the same total amount of income, just rearranged. All right. Now, the client had to write several explanation letters to say why one LLC's income dropped and one skyrocketed, and why this was okay and justifiable. A lot of their income was affiliate marketing, and they moved the affiliate marketing deposit from one LLC to another, and they were able to document that. Now, what if the client had simply one LLC that all 3 incomes dumped gross earnings into? In that case, the tax returns would not show the ups and downs of 3 discrete components. It would have consistently shown $60,000 for 2023 and $60,000 for 2024. So it would sort of, I don't want to use the word mask, but it simplified things. There wasn't question about why these 3 LLCs had sort of varying incomes. Now, I mentioned that some CPAs or attorneys may suggest that you have many companies, and there's sound reasoning. And I'm going to step on toes here and say that advice runs counter to mortgage qualification and makes mortgage qualification different. You, the interneter, should be in the driver's seat and find the balance. You don't have to do an LLC for every component if your CPA or attorney is telling you to do that. If it seems like it's getting really complicated to you, it's probably getting really complicated to an underwriter as well. I know what you're thinking. What if I have a holding company that owns the 3 LLC subsidiaries? I have typed the wrong thing. What if I have a holding company that owns the 3 LLC subsidiaries? Does that shield the income ebb and flow from the subsidiaries? No, it does not. We have to collect tax returns for the holding company and all the subsidiaries. We got to get the whole picture. And the underwriter will just look down to the lowest level of the companies, even if there's a whole bunch of nested companies, and figure out, well, why is this one increasing? Why is this one decreasing? They have to ask the question. I think it's important that people know about mortgage lending is it's really invasive. We're going to look at everything. If Warren Buffett came to me to get a mortgage, I would have to apply the same loans to that guy. And I think I saw today he's worth like $300 billion or something like that. Anyhow, we've got to get the whole picture. Next item on the list. Try not to take on small W-2 jobs. See if the employer can pay your social media company instead, your LLC. You want as much income flowing. You want as much income as possible flowing through your business. Why no W-2 income? If there's a smattering of W-2 income on your personal taxes and also self-employed income, then the underwriter can convince themselves that you have 2 jobs, even if the 2 jobs are in the same field. 2 jobs is a situation we are going to address below because it's got its own complications. Here's an example. I had a client that was a photographer. 11 months of the year, they were freelance, putting earnings in their LLC, just kind of normal photographer stuff. But for 1 whole month a year, for a bunch of years, they were W-2 employed by a concert event, where for the whole month they were hired. And for whatever reason, the company that hired them felt it necessary to pay them as a W-2, probably labor laws of some sort. This looked a little odd to underwriting, even though it was the same line of work. They were doing photography during the 11 months of the year, photography during this 12 months of the year. And we showed that they'd been doing it for many years. But it looked like two different jobs. Okay. We got through it, but the W-2 income was a distraction. So I would say if you are in an industry where you might take a contract job and they want to pay you as a W-2, see if that's maybe not possible and just ask them to pay your company. And here we are on one of the most frustrating parts of mortgage underwriting for self-employed people, consistency. Typically, we have to average 2 years of self-employed income. If income increases from years 1 to 2, we average those years. That's fair, but certainly stymies people whose income is rapidly increasing. If you were a self-employed person that made $50K in year 1 and $150K in year 2, but we average that to $100,000 a year, you might be a bit sore, but that is the rule that we have to follow. What happens if your income is decreasing? What if you made $120,000 in year 1 and then $90,000 in year 2? In this case, we have to assume the $90,000 is the income that you will have going forward. And we're just going to use the $90K as, your income going forward. We're not going to average the two because it dropped. Okay. I didn't put it on my document here. I forgot to put it in, but there is a situation where we can use 1 year's worth of tax returns for someone. If you are doing a conventional Freddie Mac loan and you've been self-employed for 5 or more years, Freddie Mac may allow us to use 1 year of tax returns without having to average or look backwards at other years. So that's a very special case. Please talk to me about if you're going to qualify for that. Okay. Woo, that was a lot. I'm going to take a short moment and read and possibly answer some of the questions in chat. Let's look over at chat. I got no chat. I got no chat at all. That's just fine. We're going to move on. We're going to move on to dual income situations, 2 different income. All right. Here's what we got. So in a 2 income situation, all of the above applies. Get a business name and a bank account. Well, okay, let me back up. In a two income situation where you have like a main job, you have your day job, it's W-2, whatever, and you're going to take on this sideline business, side hustle, and you want to use that income to qualify for a mortgage. All the above applies. Get a business name and a bank account. Get an LLC or an S Corp. Get a CPA. Bookkeeper. Gosh, I got to put bookkeeping on this list. All that applies if you're using interneting income as a second source of income or interneting as your primary job and you have an additional second job. The mortgage regulations for including 2 jobs at the same time are restrictive, but I want to cover very basic guides. You must have held 2 jobs for 2 years in a row. Small gaps are okay, but let's dive into gaps. If your secondary job, your secondary job must be the same job for 2 years. No gaps, no seasonal jobs, no big breaks. The only way an underwriter is going to accept a second job is if it's very consistent. Same job, same employer. If your employer changes their business entity and your paycheck came from one thing and then it moved on to another one, we can get an explanation letter from the employer saying, yeah, we just switched company entities and that's why things look a little bit different. But it must be the same job. Your primary job can be switched out, but keep the job gaps very small, maybe less than a month if possible. Okay, so I'm going to give a couple of different examples here. So like if Susie has a day job where she's in advertising, she's doing the grind, she's working 40 hours a week, and on the side, she's producing a little bit of YouTube content. That's been going on for a few years. She's got an LLC for it. Things are going great. And then she switches the primary job, the advertising job. She goes from one advertising agency to another. That's okay, because that's her primary. We're going to put that as her primary job. All right. Another example would be, let's say Susie is in advertising again, but she's got a secondary job that is, I don't know. She works weekends at, as a restaurant hostess. Okay, and she's been doing this for a bunch of years, 3, 4, 5 years. She works as a restaurant hostess. Problem is, she's just sort of moves from one restaurant to another kind of like paycheck, hunting a better hourly wage, that kind of thing. That situation is not going to work well. Her primary job has been consistent, but her secondary job has been switching around. It's not great. Okay. Can your secondary job make more than the primary job? Yes, it can. Recently, I had a client whose secondary job was waitressing at a very nice establishment that hosted many weddings. Because her primary job at a daycare was not very lucrative, her weekend waitressing was more income than the primary job. Why didn't I just use the waitressing as her primary? Well, because she changed daycare employers in the last year. She moved from one daycare to another. And we can do that with the primary. We can't do that with the secondary job. So the labels are kind of weird, but it really does matter. This primary job can be switched around. Secondary job cannot, but it is okay for the secondary job to actually make more income than the primary. I was really impressed. I was like, what restaurant is this that you're making more than essentially like 35 hours a week at a daycare? But hey, she was. So you made it. And I have now learned that this takes about 22 minutes to go through. It's checking for questions. We got no questions. Looks like I should wrap this up. So again, my name is Eric Peltier. You can forever find me at ericpeltier.com. That's EricPeltier.com. I'm happy to help with all mortgages, not just the states that I'm licensed in. Again, that's Minnesota, Arizona, and Colorado. My career goal is to make the mortgage process more transparent and accessible. I hope I succeeded just a little bit today. Remember, I do this class every 2 weeks, and I'd love to see you again. Toodaloo.